Hello there, everyone. Sorry about that slight delay. Hopefully you can hear me and see me out there. Can someone just do a quick note in the chat just to let us know that you can see and hear us and everything is running smoothly? And then we'll go ahead and get started cooking. We're just waiting because there's always a little delay between when I speak and when...
Okay, I got it good on my end.
We have a thumbs up.
I got several thumbs up.
Excellent,
Yep.
excellent. Okay, we are ready to go. So welcome back. Welcome back to Cooking Here with me. I have missed you guys. I think over the summer there was less interest in doing these online classes, but now that it's getting darker out and colder out, I think it's kind of a fun activity, and I hope you all are excited about it as well. We had lots of sign-ups, so I was really pleased to see all of your names again, and I'm really happy to cook with you tonight. So we are here live, as always, from Willamette Valley Kitchen Company. I think that our kitchen is more beautiful than the last time we were live, I believe. I don't exactly remember when my last live class was, but I'm pretty sure that this happened after that. So here's our beautiful new kitchen. We have new countertops that are really pretty. We have a new beautiful tile backsplash and a new sink and a new stove. My stove is not going to be cutting out on me. It's a nice, beautiful new gas stove. So really excited to cook with you all. We are here tonight to do a really lovely, nice winter soup, very hearty, delicious soup, but it is vegetarian as written. So I thought it would be fun to do a series of winter soups that are all vegetarian, but then if you want to, you can add some meat or some seafood, just whatever works for you and your particular diet. So we are doing a curried lentil tomato soup. It is based off of a ottolenghi, the famous chef ottolenghi. It's based off of one of his soups. I changed it a little bit, played around with it a little bit, and then that will be paired with a really nice flavorful fresh cilantro-lime rice that I think goes really well with that. Put them both together, you have a nice one bowl meal, and like I said, it can be vegetarian or not depending on what you want to do. One thing I just wanted to note before we get started is I had mentioned if you wanted to add some meat to this, I would do that right at the beginning before you even start the rest of the recipe. So I did mention that in the prep list. Hopefully if you're adding something like some bite-sized pieces of chicken or some sausage or something like that, you've already browned that in your pot and then just scooped it back out with a spoon off to the side, and we'll add it back in later. But we are all ready to go with our soup recipe, I think, here. So let me just turn my stove on and get that warming up. And then basically the first thing you want to do is just dice up an onion, just a regular yellow onion. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut off that end, and then the root end I just kind of trimmed off, but you want to leave that whole so that it's easier for you to chop up your onion. Cut that in half. Oh, the peel is really on there. Sometimes onions are hard to peel. I might just fudge it and take off an extra layer just to make it easier on myself. Slightly wasteful, but less struggle. I'm using this nice Dutch oven here, so you can use any large saucepan for this. It doesn't make a huge batch of soup. It makes a nice, I would say a nice 4-person batch. So this pot is really bigger than it needs to be, but it will work great for this, so we're just gonna go with it. And this soup absolutely could be, you could double it if you want. If you like to have more leftover soup, there would be no problem at all to double it. So I'm gonna get some fat in here, and I am using coconut oil. You don't have to, but if you have coconut oil, it's kind of good in here because it kind of reinforces the coconut milk flavor that we're going to add in later. So you want around 2 tablespoons of whatever oil you're using. Just let that melt. And meanwhile, I'm going to dice up this onion. Just kind of a medium dice. Really, as long as you chop up all your ingredients for this soup evenly, you could make it into a more or a less rustic, chunky soup, just depending on what you're in the mood for. Doesn't really matter. That's kind of the beauty of this soup, is that honestly you can do a lot of variations here and it's still going to taste delicious. I can smell that this is a zesty onion. I feel that if I were a person who cried from chopping onions, I would be crying right now. But onions never make me cry. I guess I'm just lucky that way. But I can smell that it's a real strong one. All right, it looks like our coconut oil is all melted here. I'm still kind of getting used to the temperature levels of my new stove, but this seems like it's nice and hot. I'm getting a good sizzle when I add those onions, so that's great. Just scoop all those in there. Like so. Give it a little stir, just so they're all coated in the oil. Great. If you want to, you can add a pinch of salt at this point. I don't have it in the recipe, but I often add a small pinch of salt just with each ingredient that I add when I'm making a soup, just so everything is nicely seasoned and you end up not having to season much at the end. I just feel like that's how I like to cook. I don't know if it makes it better or not, but I like to have everything, each little addition, be seasoned. All right, we're gonna let this cook for maybe around 10 minutes and just stir it once in a while, so I'll keep an eye on it and make sure it's not getting too hot. You want these onions to soften and get nice and golden brown, but you don't want them to get like that dark, harsh kind of brown color, so just keep an eye on them. And we will, meanwhile, just get our rice started in our other pot. So I have another medium-sized saucepan over here, and the base of our cilantro-lime rice is going to be jasmine rice. If you don't have jasmine rice, you can definitely make this recipe very nicely with just regular long grain white rice, but jasmine rice gives it kind of a little something special. Jasmine rice is really tender and really like perfumed, so it doesn't smell like perfume, but it just has a really nice aroma. So I like to use jasmine rice. So all we need to do to get our rice started is just combine the first 4 ingredients. So I have a cup of rice. You want around 1.5 cups of water. You could even use a little bit less, 1.25 cups to 1.5 cups. Jasmine rice, like I said, is softer and more tender than regular rice. If you're using long grain white rice, definitely use the full 1.5 cups. If you're using jasmine, you could use a little bit less if you want to, just to kind of avoid having it be soggy. What was I going to say? I don't know, slipped my mind, sorry. Thought I had something to say there for a second. Then I'm adding in a little bit of salt, about 1/2 teaspoon. And you want just a small amount of oil in here. You can use olive oil, you can use coconut oil, you can use grapeseed oil, you can use butter. Just something, a little small 1 teaspoon amount of fat. I'm just gonna eye it. There we go. All right, so we're gonna put that on the burner and bring it up to a nice simmer. So you can have it up pretty high right now, but keep a close eye on it, and as soon as it starts simmering or boiling, we want to turn it down immediately and put the lid on it. All right, give it a little stir if you want to, just to stir that salt in. Meanwhile, let's take a look at our onions here. I can see them starting to soften, but ooh, got a little steam on my glasses. I don't see any brown yet, but they are coming along. So, while that is cooking, we can get our garlic and our ginger ready. We want 4 cloves of garlic for our soup, and then actually a little bit later on we also want a clove of garlic for our rice, so I'm just going to get 5 cloves of garlic ready right now. You can get your peel off however you normally do. You can cut the ends off and then smack the cloves with the side of your knife. Is an easy, quick way to do it. You can use one of these garlic peelers, whatever is your preferred method. So I normally would just take these and smack them like that, especially in this recipe because we're going to either mince them up or run them through a garlic press anyway, so it doesn't matter if they're smashed. In recipes where you need your cloves more whole, like if you're going to slice the garlic, you can use one of these garlic peelers. I didn't quite get that off of there. There we go. Like so. Whatever works for you. Where's my last 2 here? Alright. This garlic has kind of a feisty peel, just like my onion. I'm going to set one of these aside over here that's peeled, and that will be for the rice. Then the rest of these 4 are ready to go into our onions once they are a little more brown. Alright, I'm stirring the onions, and I'm also seeing the rice is just coming to a boil, and my onions are getting a little bit of color now, so this is all great. So let's look at your rice. You don't really need to stir it at this point, just turn it way, way down. I'm going to look at this flame and get it really, really low. That's probably going to be good. Turn your rice down to a very low setting and then set the timer. It took me a while to find that timer. It was way, way in the back. I haven't, oh, I think this timer might be dead. Maybe that's why it was way back there. I'm going to set a timer on my phone. Let's just do it that way. I know people can just say like Siri something or other, but I never do that, so I'm just doing it manually. There it goes. 20-minute timer on my phone. Now I'm going to have to turn my phone volume on, so hopefully someone won't call me. Okay. So we have our rice covered and cooking away on very low. Our onions are looking lovely here. I think as soon as we have this ginger ready, we'll just be able to add all of this in. So I have a piece of fresh ginger, and I'm going to peel it here with a teaspoon. You're looking for something around a 3-inch-ish piece of ginger. I know they're all different widths, but just something around that size, the size of your thumb, maybe. Get all the peel off there as well as we can. I'm always looking for nice ginger that doesn't have a bunch of weird knobs on it. So this one wasn't too bad. Okay. So you can see these onions, hopefully they are definitely getting transparent and they're starting to get some nice golden brown color. I'm going to use my ginger grater and just run right through this ginger carefully. Don't want to grate my fingertips. This is a sharp grater. Look at all that nice ginger. I'm getting a great big pile here. This is great. Ooh, okay. That might be about all I can get. But I got a lot. Look at all that. My goodness. It's very fluffy. All right. Got my garlic pressed. We are going to put garlic and all of that ginger into the pot with our onions. As always, if you have any questions while you're cooking along with us, just go ahead. Oh, there is a question.
Do you rinse your rice?
Ah, yes, that's a good question. Okay, someone asked on the chat, do you rinse your rice? Again, I'm just adding the garlic and grated ginger here. I rinse some kinds of rice. Yes, absolutely. But I don't rinse jasmine rice. And I think it's kind of personal preference whether you do, but I know it's definitely a lot less common to rinse jasmine rice. Just because it's a really delicate rice and it doesn't have as much starch. So I just think it's not quite as necessary to rinse this kind of rice. All right, so I'm adding some curry powder now. And as I mentioned, this is one of the times where you can really make this recipe whatever you want it to be. As I mentioned, the original recipe was from Ottolenghi, and he definitely used Indian-style yellow curry powder blend in the original recipe. I'm actually going to use a blend of two different curries that I like from Penzeys. This one is called the Now Curry, and then this is their hot curry. I don't know. I'm just kind of playing around. This one is definitely noticeably spicy, so I feel like it might be a little overwhelming if you only used this one and put in 2 whole tablespoons. So I'm just doing half and half. But you can use whatever your favorite is. You can use also, and this is where it gets kind of fun, this recipe works equally well with Thai curry paste added right now at the same moment. So a totally different flavor there between the Thai curry paste and the Indian dry curry blend, but both really, really good. So I use red curry paste when I make this and I want to have a Thai flavor. If you have other spice blends that you like, go give them a try. I don't think it's going to hurt anything. Really, you're just adding some flavor to your onion garlic mixture at that point. So yeah, absolutely. Okay, once you add in that curry, just make sure you're stirring it. You can see probably if you're cooking along with me at home that it really kind of dries the pan out. It sucks up all that oil that's in there. So if you don't stir it at this point, you could have issues with it starting to scorch. So stir, 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 and just let those spices cook a little bit. It should smell really delicious and flavorful in your kitchen. And same thing if you're using the wet curry paste. You still want to cook that as well and let it kind of fry a little bit in the remaining oil in your pan. So either way, throw your mixture in there and let it cook for a minute or two. Then we are going to add in, it's spicy. It's a spicy curry. It's getting me. We're gonna add in our lentils and just stir them around and just kind of coat them in this mixture. I actually have, just to let you know in case you're thinking this looks like a lot of lentils, I have a little bit extra lentils here because I guesstimated at the grocery store in the bulk section trying to get 3/4 of a cup, but I ended up with 1 cup, and I didn't want to have a 1/4 cup of lentils sitting around, so I am putting in 1 cup of lentils and I'm putting in a little extra water. But if you're making it exactly as the recipe, you'd be putting in 3/4 of a cup of red lentils. Stir that just a little bit, just to kind of coat everything in the spices, and then we're going to add in our water. And get this soup going. There we go. Okay, at this same time, I like to get the water in there so that nothing burns. Now you have a little breathing room to work on other stuff. But along with the water, you want to add in some salt. We're doing about a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and then we'll just taste it again at the end, see if it needs any more, but I start out with a 1/2 teaspoon. And then I like to add in some tomatoes. And I think crushed tomatoes work well here. I like the texture of them and how they go in and combine with the soup. But I have a hard time finding, and maybe it's just the store I shop at, but I have a hard time finding a smaller size can of crushed tomatoes. So I do have a big can of crushed tomatoes, and I'm just going to put in 1/2 of the can instead of the whole can. And then I'll just throw the remaining 1/2 in a bag and freeze it for the next time I make this soup. Well, that's funny. There's a timer of nothing. It just suddenly went off, the timer that I wasn't able to set, so nothing's happening yet. Okay, so I'm going to put in approximately 1/2 of this can. Which is just about right. It's not exactly right. It's funny to me, the smaller cans are 14.5 ounces. The bigger cans are 28 ounces instead of 29 ounces. But it's very close, so that's fine. I think that's about 1/2, maybe a little tiny bit more. Okay.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Ooh, my spoon got really hot resting on here. Better not do that. I'm using a newish Dutch oven that we just are selling this winter here at the store. And I've been testing this Dutch oven out. They sent me a test one, I don't know, in late spring maybe. And I really like it. It's very nice. It's interesting. Let me wash my hands real quick. The brand name is BK, and it says on the lid since 1851. And apparently this company claims, I don't know if this is true, I need to do some research. They claim, they're a company from the Netherlands, and they claim that they are the reason the Dutch oven is called the Dutch oven, because they invented it and they're from the Netherlands. I don't know. I don't know if that's true, but we do have this nice pan available here if you are looking for a Dutch oven, and it's a good price. So it's a very heavy-duty enamel on steel pan. The sides and bottom are super thick, way thicker than any other enameled steel pan I've ever used. So it's really nice to work with, holds its heat well. And they're on sale for $99.99. And we have them in a pretty blue color, and we have them in a lovely kind of creamy color also. So if you need a Dutch oven.
Is it very heavy?
It's heavy, like it feels like it's substantial, but it's not as heavy as cast iron. So it's kind of a nice compromise.
So one question, do you drain
Yeah.
the water out of the crushed tomatoes?
I do not drain the crushed tomatoes.
And then, oh wait, yours look different, LOL.
That's funny. Okay. So is it possible, there's someone talking about crushed tomatoes and they don't look the same as mine? I don't know, it might just be a difference between brands, or is it I don't know, I don't want to say you bought the wrong thing. Maybe you bought diced tomatoes by accident. They have more juice in them, and then they're in bigger pieces. It's going to work fine either way. Don't even worry about it. There's like no, I don't know if it's possible to mess up this soup.
Can you use diced tomatoes?
You can definitely use diced tomatoes. It'll just be different, you know, different texture. It'll have little visible chunks of tomato instead of just kind of going into the body of the soup. But it'll be great. Okay, so we have these ingredients in here. We need to add one more thing, and that is some cilantro. Let me grab it out of the fridge. So I have a nice little bunch of cilantro here, and if you're making both of these recipes, you can kind of use the bottom halves, the stemmy parts, for the soup, and then the more leafy top parts for the rice. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just arranging this. It doesn't matter if you put leaves in here. It doesn't matter if you put stems in there, but I think it just works better in general. Try to use more stems in your soup and more leaves in your rice. So I'm just going to chop through these. So they're kind of fine, almost like when you're chopping up chives. So you just have little pieces of the cilantro stem, if that makes sense. And this cilantro stem is going to cook, obviously, because we're putting it in right now. It's going to cook into the soup, which is why I kind of like to use the stem part. I just feel like there's a lot of flavor in those stems, and it doesn't really hurt them to kind of cook down into your soup. Okay, there's our cilantro. And happily, cilantro tastes delicious with Indian curry powder and Thai curry paste. So it's a great pairing no matter what type of curry you're using in your soup. All right. So at this point, we need to just start a timer on our soup. And if you can see in the camera here, it is boiling pretty hard right now. You don't need it to be boiling that hard. So you just need it at a gentle simmer.
Somebody said if you buy crushed tomatoes in heavy puree, it may look less watery and more viscous.
Yeah, my can says, we had a comment about the crushed tomatoes, and I agree. My can says in rich puree. It's S&W brand. So yeah, it might say that phrasing, heavy puree or rich puree, and they might look a little different.
By the way, we got a message from YouTube that the stream is not as good, and people might be experiencing buffering, and I don't know how to fix that.
Well, I don't know if you could hear Scott there, but
it's back to excellent.
Oh, good. Okay, we had a brief message from YouTube that things weren't great, and I hope no one got disconnected or anything. But now apparently it's back to good, excellent, in fact. So that's good. Let's see. So this, if you can see in the camera now, is at a nice gentle simmer, just how I want it. And you can set your lid on there, just kind of halfway, like so. And we're gonna set a timer. The lentils take about 20 minutes to soften up and kind of meld.
Do you want me to set a timer on my phone?
I was gonna see where my timer is at. Actually, no, I'll set one over here.
Okay.
I'll just set one over here. We have 6.5 minutes left on the rice, so that's great. I set that timer for a little less than 20 minutes because it has been simmering here for a few minutes and I've just been blathering on, so I set it for 18 instead, but I think it'll be nicely done by that point. Let's just make sure we have the remaining ingredients ready to add into the soup at the end. Oh, and one other thing. So I wanted to talk about adding more vegetables to this soup. I'm cooking it. Yes, we have a question.
Was I supposed to put in coconut milk?
No. Oh, yes. God. Yes, you were. So was I. Woo! I'm out of practice, guys. Forgot how to cook. I forgot how to cook over the summer. No, I didn't. I just forgot how to follow recipes on camera, which is totally different.
And somebody said my computer tweaked out, and that was probably the YouTube
That was probably when it did that, yeah. Yes, whoever was watching the recipe, unlike me, you are supposed to add the coconut milk. So let's go ahead and add that in. So this is just, again, a 14.5-ounce can of coconut milk. I'm using the Savoy brand right now, which they actually call coconut cream, which usually just means it's a little bit richer and thicker. But you can generally use them interchangeably as long as it's unsweetened. There is a product that you use for pina coladas that is called coconut cream, but it's sweetened coconut cream. You do not want that. Don't put that in your soup or you'll have a strange problem on your hands. Okay. Thank you to whoever reminded me to put the coconut milk in. It's funny because this recipe turns out just lovely and nice and creamy. And it's kind of intriguing to me because usually you don't want to cook and cook and cook coconut milk, or it can kind of like separate and get a little weird. But in this recipe, something about the combination of the ingredients, it doesn't do that at all. So it's totally fine to put it in here right now.
And how long was the timer for?
I put my timer for 18 minutes, which is fine because all we're trying to do is get the lentils soft, and they've been in here just fine. So I might turn it up just a skosh just to get it back to a simmer after adding that coconut milk, but then we'll turn it back down. All right. So this is really funny because I was going to stand here and tell you that you needed to have your coconut milk ready because I was losing my marbles. We've already put that in. So really the only thing else you need to get ready for your soup is just some lime. If you wanted to, you could garnish the soup with more cilantro leaves, and I would do that if you're serving it without rice. But since we are making our very cilantro-filled rice, I don't think you need to go to the bother of additional cilantro leaves on your soup. So I just do lime zest and lime juice at the end. So we can get that ready if you like. Just make sure you zest your lime first because you want the zest of this whole lime going in there. And it's a lot harder to do once the lime is cut. Have you ever done that where you only had one, you purchased exactly the right amount of citrus fruit for a recipe and then realized after you juiced the lime that it, or the lemon, that it was supposed to be zested? Because I have totally done that, and then I'm like holding this like empty lime half and trying to zest it. It's a disaster. So it's one of those good reasons to always read your recipe. Yes, we have a question.
Do leftovers reheat well with the coconut cream?
Yes. So the question was, do leftovers reheat? And they absolutely do. Again, I agree with whoever asked this question. Often it's a little tricky to boil coconut milk or reheat coconut milk, but it is not a problem. I feel like maybe it's something to do with like the lentils breaking down and everything just combining nicely. I'm not really sure, honestly, but they reheat totally fine. No issues, no separation problems, so it's great. I'm getting my lime zest. I have a little bit more. I'm just going to kind of dump this pile right here because we're going to add that in right at the end. If you happened to have lime leaves and you're using the Thai paste, you could definitely also put lime leaves in here in place of the lime zest. Just, I don't know, some people have them in their freezer because you have to buy a big bag of them and then you usually don't use them all. So I have my lime zest prepared, and then I usually take the rest of this lime and just cut it into little, well, I should say I take half of it and save it, and I take the other half and cut it into 4 little wedges. Just like that. So because this soup serves about 4 people, you can offer them a little lime wedge on their plate to sprinkle on their soup and rice, and it's just kind of a nice fresh thing. So set those aside for serving. But we have our lime half and our zested lime here to go in when we're seasoning the soup at the end. Okay, I can see this simmering. Don't forget to stir this every once in a while. Right now, it definitely has enough liquid in it where you wouldn't have any problems with it sticking, but as it simmers, it gets a little thicker, and so just make sure you're stirring it so it doesn't scorch. I guess, actually, I think the temperature's about right now. I'll keep an eye on it, but I am going to cover it partially. Let me look at the timer on our rice. Should just be a couple minutes left.
Question.
Yes.
When would you add halibut, rockfish, or cod? And
Yeah.
what about shrimp?
Okay, so let's talk about additions because we're waiting for our rice to get done and it just has a couple more minutes. So if you are adding any extra vegetables, I want you to look at them and think about how long they will take to cook. And if it's something really hard, like potatoes or carrots, you could put it in right now. So if you have any of that you want to add in, just go ahead and put it right now. It will simmer with your soup, add more delicious flavor, and it will be done and nice and tender when the soup is done. If you have soft vegetables, for example, zucchini or bell peppers or mushrooms or like greens, like kale or spinach, I would add those in just a couple minutes before the soup is going to be done. So, as far as vegetables go, decide what hardness your vegetables have and add them in accordingly. And then our question that we had was if you're adding seafood, which by the way would be so delicious in this soup. So I definitely, if you like seafood, I urge you to try that. But I would add it in definitely towards the end. It kind of depends if you're adding fish, how thick the fillets are. So if it's a really thin, like a rockfish fillet is usually pretty thin, those could take maybe even just like 3 to 4 minutes and they'd be done. Versus cod, usually a little thicker, so maybe like 5 or 6 minutes. And shrimp, depending on the size, totally depends on the size, but I would say, like not very long, like 3 minutes for small shrimp and maybe 5 minutes for larger shrimp. And I would just, whatever the 20 minutes is on your timer, just subtract that amount and add it in at that point and just kind of let it gently poach in your soup as it simmers. And I think you'll have really delicious, perfectly cooked seafood.
And somebody asked about kale.
Yeah, kale. So I like to add kale right at the end. I don't like my kale to be very cooked. So it kind of depends if you are a person who still likes your kale to have some like texture or not. If you want it to be totally soft, maybe 5 minutes before the end of the soup. But I would add it in even just like 2 minutes before. Sometimes I even just finish my soup, throw kale in, put the lid on it, and it's not even on anymore. It's just the heat from the residual heat from the pot cooks the kale. So depends on your kale, how cooked you want it to be, but during the last few minutes for sure. Okay, I think our rice is done, and I am going to take it off the heat. I'm going to peek at it, but I want to leave most of the steam in there, so normally I wouldn't even peek, but I don't know what happened with my timer. I kind of lost the time for the rice, so I'm pretty sure it's about done, but not 100% sure. Oh yeah, it looks good. It doesn't have any water. It has the little, when you cook rice just right and it has little holes in the top of the rice? It's looking like that, if you know what I mean. So I am taking it, if you have an electric burner, actually physically take it off the heat and move it to a different spot. If you have a gas burner, you can generally just kind of turn it off, but remove it from the heat, leave the lid on, and set a timer for 5 minutes. This time I'm actually going to do that. I don't know what happened to my timer. It was going. Okay, it's going. And what we're doing with the rice, if you don't normally do this, it does improve the texture of your rice. Basically, once it has absorbed all the water and cooked properly, it's always beneficial to rice to take it off the heat, but let it just continue steaming, and it just gives you nicer, fluffier rice, I think. So that's good. And we can chop up the remaining items that are going to go in our rice once we do open it up. So we have our garlic clove. If you're using a press, which I am, you can just have it sitting there. Otherwise, mince up your garlic clove. And then we have our second lime. So each recipe uses one lime. So again, with this one, you also want to zest it first. We're gonna put the lime zest in, and that'll give the rice such a beautiful citrusy fragrance and flavor. I basically can't get enough citrus zest. I put citrus zest in everything. When recipes say to only use the juice, I'm like, why? Why wouldn't I use the zest too? So I believe that's actually one of the changes to the soup recipe that I made, is that it said to just use lime juice, and I was like, it would be better if you put in lime zest too. And of course it was. Okay, so there's my second lime zest. Make another pile over here. And you can cut your lime in half. Depending on how big it is and how juicy it is, you may want only half of it, or you may want all of it. We have some scallions. I'm using 3 because they were tiny, little baby scallions today. So normally I just use 2, but I'm using 3. And you can just go ahead and slice thinly through those. And if you want to, I even like to kind of go ahead and give them a little extra chop once I've sliced through them. I'll show you what I mean here in a second. So there's all my slices of scallions, and then you can even just kind of run through here a little bit more just to get them even more fine, so they really go and give their nice flavor all through your rice. I bought these scallions yesterday at Roth's because I had forgotten to get scallions. I had everything else, but I forgot scallions. And they were just really nice scallions. I like them when they're small like this, but I put them in my car, and then I was driving home, and I had one other stop to make, and when I got back in the car, my whole car smelled like scallions. It's kind of intense, actually. I was like, wow, those are some good scallions. Okay, I hear my soup bubbling, so if you hear that, don't forget to stir it. And maybe think to yourself, I might need to turn that down, if it is bubbling as hard as mine was. Okay, that's a little calmer. We are basically, oh, we have one more thing to chop up, which is the cilantro for our cilantro rice. So I have my wad of cilantro leaves here, and it's probably more than half a cup. I probably don't need to use all of this. Let's just see here. There was one funky looking leaf. I like it when it has a lot of cilantro in the rice though. I think it's really good. So I might just go ahead and stir it all in there. What the heck? Yeah, that's probably like twice as much cilantro as the recipe calls for, and I think I'm just gonna go for it. why not? Of course, if you are a person who does not like cilantro, what would be good options for this? I mean...
Mint?
Mint? Yeah, I think mint. Mint. Yeah, sure. Mint, or weirdly even dill. I have recently realized that they use a lot of dill in Vietnam and Thailand, which I never knew until recently. And it's really interesting to have it. I've had a green curry out at a restaurant where they had fresh dill on the green curry, and I was like, this is so interesting and different, and I never had experienced anything quite like that. So dill could be interesting. Parsley would be fine, but maybe just a little boring. We don't want that. All right. Okay, I'm failing at using my timer. I don't know what's happening. I honestly don't know what's happening. I use this timer all the time, but I think it's been about 5 minutes. So what you want to do at this point, after approximately 5 minutes of letting your rice rest, is we're going to put in the garlic, the lime zest, and the scallions. And we are going to just stir them in really quickly and let them sit, and the heat from the rice will kind of lightly cook those 3 ingredients. So I'm gonna just grab a fork. Rice looks really nice. Can you see? Is that in the camera? Okay. Hopefully you can see that it is nice and fluffy as I'm moving it around here with this fork. And then I'm going to add in scallions. And my 1 garlic clove. And 1 of my 2 piles of lime zest. Just stir that in and then put the lid back on the rice for about a minute. So those things we want to kind of cook into the rice. And then when we open it back up, we're going to put in cilantro and lime juice, which are 2 really fresh things that don't really need to cook from the heat of the rice. So that's why they're separated out here. It just kind of makes it the best it can possibly be. I just heard the timer go off for a soup, so let me go turn it off. Here's our lovely soup, simmering away. So you can give it a stir at this point. And I would grab a spoon and just make sure that the lentils are soft. If time has gotten away from you and you haven't added in either your seafood or your softer vegetables, it's not the end of the world, because nothing really bad happens to this soup at this point. It's just the lentils are soft, and it's not going to get worse or go bad if you keep cooking it for a few more minutes. So if you forgot to add those things, just go ahead and add them right now. But just try to get a spoonful where you can definitely tell there's some lentils. And just make sure that the lentils are not feeling crunchy in your mouth, which these are not. So basically our soup here is done. And yeah, we can just go ahead, basically we can turn it off. We're gonna season it with lime zest and some lime juice. Put that in first before you decide if you want more salt. Because oftentimes when you put acid into a recipe, you will find that it doesn't need as much salt as you thought it did. Acid is a really important seasoning, and it's just delicious. Sometimes when people are just learning how to cook, they don't realize how important it is, and they think, oh, it needs more salt, it's bland, when really it just needs a little bit of acid. Okay, so I'm going to taste this. I do think it needs a little salt, but not a lot. I'm putting in maybe a 1/4 teaspoon, maybe a little bit more than that. And then let's also finish off our rice. Should have a really limey fragrance when you open up your pot of rice. Oh, this is so much cilantro, but I'm loving it. Just stir in that cilantro. I like this rice to just be like green with fresh cilantro. It's really good. And then we're also going to add in, I didn't put quite all the cilantro in, I feel like I have enough. I'm going to add in some lime juice. I feel like this is a juicy lime. I feel like I'm just going to use half. On your recipe it says juice of a small lime, and I don't think it needs both halves. And then you just want a little bit more fat. When I'm at home, I almost always use butter for this last bit, but I have a ton of butter in the refrigerator, but it's all earmarked for making Christmas cookies tomorrow. I don't have any extra, so I'm just going to put in a little bit more oil, just to kind of, you know, make everything taste better. Give it a little more fat. It's almost like you're dressing your rice with a tiny, tiny bit of vinaigrette here at the end by putting in that fresh lime juice and a little bit of fat. Okay, just making sure this is all really nicely stirred. You can see after just sitting here for a minute or two, the cilantro kind of wilts, so it kind of combines nicely into the rice. Well, there's a giant piece that I didn't chop up. Throw that in there. All right, there is our rice. I'm going to go ahead and make a little plate of this just to show you guys what it's going to look like. But before I do that, I just want to ask, does anybody have any questions here as we're just finishing up this recipe?
Put them in the chat.
Put them in the chat. Exactly. This is the first time I've cooked on camera or in person here where I haven't had those of you who came to class before remember I had a metal bar with all of the utensils hanging from it. And I decided to not put it back up because I loved how the tile looked so much. But now I'm trying to decide if I'm ruining that decision or not. I'm not sure yet. I'm still trying to decide. So we'll see. Because I definitely do have to hunt around in here more. But I did get a little utensil container, so I can at least put my most used utensils out for each class. Okay, so I'm just going to plate this up, trying to make a nice little mound of the jasmine rice. Jasmine rice doesn't stick together as much as some other rices, but you can still kind of get it into a nice little shape there. And then we'll get some of our delicious curry soup. Kind of put it next to each other. If you have a wider bowl like this, you can kind of serve it so that it's in two halves, which is how I like it to look. And then there's our little lime. And maybe we'll put, just because I have them here, a few sprigs of fresh cilantro on top of it. Okay, don't forget, any last questions in the chat. But here is our finished dinner for this evening.
So mine is so good.
Yay!
And if you wanted the rice to be coconut flavored, would you use coconut cream as the fat?
Oh, okay. So we have a quick question about the rice and making it coconut flavored as well. So usually when I make coconut rice, what I do is right from the start, I use, in place of the amount of water, I use half water and half coconut milk. So that would be my number one recommendation if you really want a nice coconutty rice. But you could definitely stir in a little bit of coconut milk at the end, like you said, instead of the fat, just to give it a little hint. But I think if you want a full coconut flavor, you really need to get it in there from the beginning. And it's better to do half water, half coconut milk. If you try to do just coconut milk, it's too thick and the rice can't absorb it properly. So yeah, that's what I would do. Okay. We're right on time. All right. I loved being back in the kitchen here with you all and cooking with you. I hope you had a great time this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Despite my slight craziness at forgetting to put a couple ingredients in, we got there in the end, and you guys always help me out to remember and follow along with the recipes and make sure I'm not losing my marbles. So thank you so much. We are all ramped up here in the store for Christmas time and the holiday season. So, you know, come on in if you need anything for your friends or family or your favorite cook in your life, or if you need anything for big holiday meals. We are happy to help you out, and we're still open Tuesday through Saturday. So I think for this holiday season, just because of our lower level of staff here at the store, we're just going to continue being closed on Sundays and Mondays. That may change in the future, but for this year, we'll stick with that. So I hope to see you in here. I miss you all, and I hope you're having a great dinner this evening. If you didn't quite catch all of this for some reason or whatever, we will definitely post the finished video on my YouTube channel, and I will send you a link tomorrow once that's all done. All right, have a great evening. Thank you for cooking along with me.